Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Entheos. Time will take us all out March 3rd on Metal Blade Records. This album has 9 tracks, 40 minutes in length, and this is the band's third full-length studio album. They are an American progressive death metal band. Now, I feel like this album has two main core elements that are going to have an incredible impact on how much you're going to get out of this record: the design and the sound experience. As far as the design is concerned, I love it. I love records that allow you to feel like the whole album is just one really long song, where tracks bleed from one to the next, where the sense of continuity is never interrupted, where you feel like you can grow, you can morph, you can learn from the album with every passing song. That's exactly this design, that's exactly this approach. A record that allows you to get the most out of each and every single song individually, but when you put them in the context of the record, you see a lot more. Everything becomes a lot more clear to you, the album becomes clear, the path in front of you becomes clear, and the experience that you're going to get out of this record becomes enhanced. Great design, really giving a lot of life, a lot of energy, and a lot of quality to the overall sound and to the overall experience that this album offers. Now, as far as that sound is concerned, I love the fact that this is a complex record that feels simple. And this is important. When you have a more progressive death metal album with jazz elements, with technical elements, with electronic elements, this is a very diverse sounding album that uses progressive death metal as the backdrop. You always have to be aware that you don't want to overburden the listener with too many elements, with too much texture, with too much substance. It allows you to lose track of where you are, and it becomes really hard to tell the forest from the trees. So what you have to do is create an album that sound-wise is complex, that has layers, that has elements that you can discover every time that you press play that perhaps you didn't notice before, but at the same time you don't want to force them down the throats of the listener. You want the listener to kind of discover the album at your own pace, so that makes the album feel a little bit more straightforward and a little bit more simple. This record is exactly that. You go through the album, you feel like you're just listening to an album that is putting all the cards on the table, it's not hiding anything, everything is in front of you. But the next time you press play and you listen to the album again, you're discovering elements that you didn't necessarily see before. So the layers are there. You're just not peeling them all, or you're not being forced to peel them all at the same time. You can do that every single time you go through the record, allowing you to better understand the album, grow with the album, and allowing this record to have longevity as far as playability is concerned. The jazz elements that I mentioned earlier are really important in order for you to have this sort of life, to have this sort of experience that is diverse, that it's subtle, and still very textured. I honestly really enjoyed it because it didn't feel like it dominated the sound, that it dominated what pushes this record forward. It was just another element that added quality to the experience but didn't define the experience. As far as the sound itself, you gotta talk drums, you gotta talk bass, you gotta talk guitars. As far as the drums are concerned, great sound, great texture, giving a big presence to the record. This is a heavy album at times, but more so than heavy is an album that has volume. And that volume really comes from the drum sound. A drum sound that is filled with energy, that doesn't feel hollow, that has great bass and grounds the album extremely well across each and every single song, regardless of the different directions that the songs could have. When it comes to the bass, I like the technical elements that the bass brings, because when the bass pops, the album becomes a little bit less straightforward, becoming a little bit more technical, but not overly technical, merging or creating a gray zone between technical death metal and progressive death metal. The bass really helps to define those kind of parameters, or that gray zone that this album so very often puts forward. But it's such a nice moment, it gives nice moments within the album that allows you to feel different about the record, that allows you to once again better digest the sound experience of all of these 9 songs. Now, when it comes to the guitars, I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is a guitar-driven album, but a lot of the movement that the album has, a lot of the diversity or subtle diversity that the album offers is definitely defined by the guitar sound. It doesn't feel complicated. It doesn't give you unnecessary twists and turns. It rather oversimplifies its processes, and it tells you exactly what it's giving you. It puts everything once again on the table. So it's a guitar sound that is dynamic, that has life, that has energy, you're perhaps going to see that energy a lot better defined in the guitar solos that the album has. But it's an album that has a lot of connectivity with what the guitars are doing, and the direction of the songs and the momentum of the songs, or even the atmosphere of the songs, is definitely defined by the guitar sound. But I still don't feel like this is necessarily a guitar-driven album. It's an album that rather uses the guitars to conduct the energy from point A to point B, allowing the songs to have ebbs and flows, allowing the songs to have the different sides of the band coming together as one in a very clear format with a lot of subtle movements underneath the surface. As far as the vocals are concerned, I have to say that the clean vocals on this album offer important pockets of clarity. Either be the clean vocals or the female vocals, still clean nevertheless. So I honestly enjoy those moments because it gave me a little bit of a reprieve. When you think of an album that has incredible progressive elements that thin out the sound experience, and then it has almost brutal at times, but more traditional death metal sound that gives thickness, that gives heaviness to the sound, those clean vocals bring in the more progressive side into the forefront and allow you to see that it's not just a progressive death metal sounding album, is an album that also offers a little bit of a progressive side as far as the vocal approach is concerned. Then with the harsh vocals, you tie that in a lot more, a lot better, or in a more direct way into the death metal sounding side of the record. So having these two elements match and balance out the overall experience really well, considering what you're getting from the sound. I enjoy this dynamic because it never felt like one was stepping on the toes of the other. They always felt equal to one another. They always felt like one was there to enhance the other, and very similar to how you're going to experience the sound, and you're going to feel like this is a very simple record to listen to. Vocally is exactly the same way. They just mirror what they did with the sound and what they did with the vocals. All around, when you have a design like this, when you have an album that doesn't pause, that just feels like you're taking pieces of a song and the energy of that song and what you've learned from that song into the next track and into the next track and into the next track, and you have sound that doesn't overburden the listener, that doesn't feel like there's so much there that you almost have to pause everything around you in order for you to get all the fine details, and you have this more streamlined approach, the record becomes playable. It's an album that doesn't get old. It's an album that has great quality, and therefore I have to say this is their best record to date, because it's a record that feels very natural, feels very organic. It feels like they start playing the album. It was almost like a jam session where you start with the first song, and the vibe, the mood of that first song dictated exactly what every single song after that became. The album just feels like that. It feels like it has a natural progression from song to song within the design and within the sound that it gives. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with The Interior Wilderness, a heavy, methodic song using the guitars to push that progressive sound, allowing some light to come into the bleak heaviness that the overall track have. The vocals stay very consistent with that heaviness. Inserting some progressive guitar pockets in this track allows you to see the two different levels, or the two different sides of the same coin within a single song. This is a track that really breaks the progressive side of the band and the more death metal side of the band, and you see these pockets of one and these pockets of the other. When you have them so well defined and so well separated from one another, it allows you to get the most out of both without necessarily having a clash between them. And that is the beauty of this track, a little bit of a synopsis of what the whole album is all about. And then as this song ends, as this song starts to dissipate, Oblivion starts. That's the next track. So these two songs almost have to be heard back to back, because once again, the whole album works like this, but these two tracks are really important to listen to in sequence, because it feels like it's part A and part B of the same experience. So all the lessons that you took from The Interior Wilderness, you're going to be able to develop them a lot better, or understand them a lot better in Oblivion. A seamless movement between these two tracks really adds to that experience. The progressive jazz sound or atmosphere that this track has, that we saw at the end of the last one, moving into this one, becoming more defined in this track, really allows the harsh vocals to come in and create a heavy experience, making the song overall also feel bigger. Not overpowering, it's not a brutal track from that point of view, but it's a song that pushes the boundaries with never really passing them. It takes it to the edge of how heavy it can be without losing the progressive side, without losing those jazz elements. So it pushes the boundaries, doesn't surpass the boundaries, coming back into its normal rotation, coming back into the fold. A track that has lateral movement but doesn't break or doesn't fall apart, and it's the perfect continuation from the experience, from the atmosphere, from the sound of the interior wilderness. Last but not least, Clarity and Waves, short, compact, to the point. This is a track that doesn't break the two sides of the band into two different faces. This is a coin that has two sides, but the coin was melted. And when the coin is melted, you don't know which side is which. So when I looked at this track, when I'm listening to this track, I feel the brutal side of the band, I feel the death metal side of the band, but I also feel the more progressive side of the band completely incorporated with one another, allowing the song to feel more cohesive, allowing the song to emphasize all the right elements, but at the same time. This song feels as heavy as it does progressive at the exact same time. There is no division, there is no breaks between one and the other. You don't have to navigate this track because of the size that it has, how compact it is, how cohesive it is. Still dynamic, but not as dynamic as some other songs, feeling a lot more streamlined, feeling a lot more straightforward, feeling a lot more simple. I enjoy this track because of that, because sometimes you just need a song that takes you from point A to point B in the shortest distance possible, and that's exactly what Clarity and Waves does. This is it. Entheos with Time Will Take Us All, out March 3rd on Metal Blade Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.